Everybody, welcome back. We're doing another Marvel Future Revolution video. In this one, we are going to be talking about the most important stats. What are they? What should you be focusing on first? Is it a PvP thing? Is it a PvE thing? All that sort of thing. So I have done these videos in the past. This one, there's a lot of new influx of new players in the game. I wanted to make sure to get another one out there because I'd seen a lot of questions recently. So I figured, you know what? Why not? Let's do another one of these things. These things do evolve as time goes on. And what I mean by that is, you know, early on, you know, some folks were like, defense pierce didn't matter, but guess what? It changed. It definitely did. Now, was it always that way? I don't know. I didn't test necessarily, but some folks who were said it did. So we're going to look at the stats, was PvE and PvP. At a high level, just sort of what is most important. If you're new to the channel, check out the Discord link in the description below. Hammer on like buttons. Subscribe if you want to help the algorithm, all that sort of thing. And let's check this out.
Bring me WolverThor!
Okay, stats. So there are a ton of stats in this game. There's so many different, like there's a wide spectrum I could talk about stats with. There are some really good experts in the game who look at stats. Claire, Callista, they know a lot. So I'm going to try to stay at a high level surface with diving into that. If either of you comment below to share anything that I've either screwed up or something you want to elaborate on or a point that I either missed or something that you want to concur on, much appreciated. Or even if you're not one of those two and you know of something, please comment below. I'd love to hear about it. Come to the Discord as well. So as you look, first, if you didn't know that, come to your hero screen, check here, you can look at all the stats. I like clicking view at max stats, so that way it shows you, it shows in red how much over, or which ones are at max, and then it'll show how much over it is for those. So it's like, I only got a couple. So you see my PvE build, this is PvE build. So it's kind of like, okay. Now, if you also want to know, let's see where, I think in here, this shows the max stats, meaning if you're like, well, what is a max on something? You just go to that little question mark, you scroll down a little bit, and here's all the stats in the game and the specific max that you can put here, right? So here's the max over here, and you can see there's quite a number of stats here. And notice some of these here, flame, chill, shock, we'll touch on those a little bit. Only some characters get those. Not everybody gets those. Same thing with surface to air and air to surface damage. Those are generally considered terrible stats to get because of the way the game works. And this is this is where you start diving into the more detailed stuff, is each stat that you've got in this game is a multiplier on another one. So, you know, for crit damage or total damage or supervillain damage, those are all multiplied by each other, as well as flame damage and then chill damage and then shock damage. So you want more of each one of those. You don't want to get 1 to 100 and then go to the next one. You want to get all of them at something so that they're all across the board the best you can. Now, the game limits your ability to do that, which is why I'm making this video, because it's like, well, what should I choose first? So, and then again, it changes a little bit between PvE and PvP. So because the game really sort of leans into PvP, I'm going to talk about that one first. Let me move in a spot here where I cannot be attacking anybody. So I will switch to my PvP stats here. And let's take off that. So now, when I look at my PvP, so you can see my power level goes up. The first thing that you generally want to focus on PvP is defense pierce. It's been that way for a long time. I highly consider or recommend getting that up to 75%. You can see mine's a little bit over. I'll work on tweaking those type of things, but you want to get at least to 72, 75%. Again, some of that will come through nano, etc. I'll get into that in a bit. The next two, PvP damage or PvP damage increase and PvP damage decrease. Technically, you'll hear most people, the real gurus in the room, talk about decrease being more important because if you can live, you can do more damage. If you're just a glass cannon, you might not be able to do much at all. So those two are probably some of the most important ones for that. After that, it's basically everything else. So and this is going to be character dependent. For me personally, I really like to get crit rate up, and this is going to be something for both PvE and PvP content. Crit rate and crit damage go hand in hand, but getting to 50% crit rate is really important. Now, that's not the max, but it is important to get to that sort of thing. I'd recommend being closer to 60-70%, and then your crit damage is going to be even better. Widow, you know, and again, some of these other stats, this is where it starts to, all the different things matter a bit, but where I'm at, and most people will come after like the crit damage, crit rate, is you're going to start looking at cooldown decrease. You're going to start looking at stam recovery, alt gauge recovery, depending if that's really just for a Widow more than anything else. It's for a magic. It's probably for a Scarlet Witch. It's not going to be for an Iron Man or a Doctor Strange or a Spider-Man. They're not going to care about alt gauge. An additional stat that might matter a bit is accuracy rate. Again, talking PvP. But one of the things that's sort of the debate that goes back and forth here is you really mainly need accuracy rate for Spider-Man. He's probably the biggest one, and he is still pretty broken as far as difficulty and beating. I recommend him as the best free-to-play character to bring up because you can get him to about 1.3, 1.4, 1.5 and punch up pretty dramatically because of his dodge rate. And a lot of people don't build accuracy super high, so you can constantly dodge and get off tons of hits. And he hits like a truck. But accuracy rate, it still does matter a bit because you will have some people build into dodge, and it is frustrating missing a big ability. And actually, it will matter in PvE a little bit too. All right, so let's see other ones. So attack matters, but it's your like kind of your base multiplier. So you definitely want to get that up, but that ends up tending to be something that it naturally happens over time. As you get to the end game stuff, you'll get people in the 30, 40,000 range. Defense and HP recovery. HP recovery is considered probably the worst base stat in the game. You certainly want more defense and HP, but not at risk of some of these other offensive stats. So if you get those, it's kind of like, all right. I talked about stam recovery and alt gauge a little bit. Dodge rate, that matters a ton for Spider-Man. You want to get it there, and it certainly matters for other characters, but it's not that critical because you want to, unless you're at a really high percentage there. Crit damage decrease, that became and sort of is still a hotness. I was going to say the new hotness. It still matters. You want to get it high up, but it only decreases the crit damage chance by that percentage. It's not like if you get it to 100, you guarantee no crit damage. If that was the case, that would be, you'd want to max that, but it's not the case. Max damage rate is something that people talk about a lot, and ultimately all this is probably at the tippy top of the game where even your best, most min-max players who have everything all over the place are like, I can't do anything, so I have no spot for this. Max damage rate, it really, you almost can ignore it. I hate to say that. There are a few, you want it to be high. Yes, you do. But the way max damage rate works is the way I understand is if you have a scale from 1 to 10, you start off at 5, max damage rate determines where you roll between that 5, and you can increase that 5 to like a 7 and it determines, or increase it to an 8, it determines. But the analogy that I used was if you're going to war with a nuclear weapon, you're still using a nuclear weapon. It might hit a little harder or a little softer, but you're still using that weapon. So in that regard, that's why I think max damage rate sort of falls down that list a little bit. Talked about cooldown decrease. Total damage ends up being a stat. Again, it's another multiplier. You want to see that go up. I'll talk about that a little bit more when I jump to PvE. We believe status effect resistance and accuracy might become more important with Scarlet Witch. We'll see. But generally speaking, those are pretty low on the priority list. Guard damage decrease. Those again, they matter, but they typically are sort of one of those, well, I guess I got one roll and it's not that big of a deal type thing. It never became a big meta thing. Captain America is great with guard damage, but it's not something that seems to be really big in the game. And then I talked about surface to air and air to surface. These are generally considered trash. While they are multipliers, the window of opportunity to gain on that multiplier is decreased. So it's kind of like, maybe a Widow would like a surface to air because so many people fly, but I'll tell you that it's not I mean, to hit, especially in a Mega Wars, people just fly away from you. Can't do anything about it. You very rarely are able to hit them up there. And then range damage decrease stuff. Those are newer in the game. Again, multipliers if you can get them, but they're not anything that are like super crazy. So, all right, now we're gonna talk about PvE some here. I already talked about this a little bit. Crit rate, get it to 50%. So straight up, get it to 50%. Mine's again 60s. It's about the same. I just think it's really important to get that high up. After that, I'm sort of looking at my crit damage. Now, for me as a Widow, there is another damage multiplier coming out of the alt. So my crit damage, I want to be even higher because it's a multiplier on that multiplier. You know what I mean? So I think it's 38% or something along those lines. So I want to gather that 26%. I want to maximize that. I actually changed my specializations to play with that a bit so that I can get that damage. And you want that crit rate so that when you're not using that alt, you have a better opportunity to kind of hone in on that crit damage. Defense Pierce used to not matter in PvE. With Alliance raids, now it is. It's becoming more and more. This is my PvE build, and you can see I'm almost at 70%. It's pretty high. I'd like it to be a little bit higher, but again, I'm trying to get this crit rate, crit damage, and I actually want my multiplier total damage to be a bit high as well. Again, they're multipliers, so I'm gonna look at a spreadsheet before we go to talk, and that's sort of where you can deep dive. But when you look at these, the one that's the most important outside of these ones that I've talked about up front is the one that's going to give you the biggest percent change. Meaning, like, if I've got a stat that's at like 0.2 or 20% and I can get 0.05 on it, the percent change might be better. Versus if it's 0.5, it's higher up and I don't get that, then it's, or at 0.5 and it's 0.05, it's kind of like, that's not much of a percent change. This other one is better. So that might not make sense. When I get to the spreadsheet, it'll help explain it a little bit better. Accuracy rate for PvE, actually, if that is too low, that will be a problem. I have missed on snipes with Black Widow where it would miss a boss, and that would be very frustrating. So that's important. Okay, again, stam recovery, alt gauge recovery, cooldown decrease, those all matter. Those are sort of the next set of tiers where you're like, after you get your crit rate, your crit damage, these things matter because if you can't get your abilities off, then you can't be shooting things if you're just basicing something. So you got to bring those up. I like to call it a ladder approach, where it's like, you got to bring both things up together and you've got to ladder up a lot of different things. So total damage to touch, status effect, resistance, and accuracy. Look, you need to land your stuff. But people tend not to lean into those. You don't care about PvP or guard damage really that much in PvE. If you're at the Magneto invasion, yes, you need a guard damage, but a lot of people aren't necessarily going to build that. And then your supervillain damage certainly matters as well. So there's, again, some of these other ones down here that you can build up on. If you've got a Storm or a Star-Lord, yes, these multipliers, they matter. That's why a Flame Star-Lord or a Shock Storm will do additional damage, more so that you see in PvE, or they have the potential for that because they have an additional multiplier they can use. That's huge, whereas other characters don't have that. So those are the most important stats. Before I jump to the spreadsheet, I just want to say real quick that you can only get some of these stats in certain spots. You definitely want to try to get a couple defense pierce on your head. I like to try to get crit rate on my head if I can. Obviously you can see I didn't. Attack, you can get attacked so many different places. Status effect accuracy matters a little bit. You want to try to typically get 2 rolls of accuracy on your chest because, again, you don't get those from very many other places. I didn't love this chest, but it was about the best one I got, and so I just went with it. It's kind of like, all right, whatever, I'll go for it. I didn't love, again, the crit damage or the guard damage. I was like, I would have preferred one more of these other ones if possible, but I didn't get it. So I know I had the 2 accuracy rate, and I was like, you know what, go for it. Crit damage decrease, you always want to try to get that on your gloves or your gun or whatever you've got in that C slot. Card damage decrease, it matters. I take a little bit of it. And then boots, again, this changes. I hate that I have HP recovery on these. To me, it is a complete and utter waste. I've only nanoed that one, but I got 2 cooldown decreases on it. And so I was kind of like, That's really good. I like my stam and I alt, but what I would have liked to have is 2 alt, 2 cooldown, 1 stam. That to me would have been by far the best. You see, I've got some Rise of the East boots in here. Those are the ones I'm thinking about taking up. Now, again, I wish I had 2 cooldown, 2 alt, and 1 stam, but as a Black Widow, pretty sexy looking at those. So if I ever roll into Rise of the East with her, those are the boots that I would bring up. And again, every character is different. So, you know, I've been talking about this spreadsheet. Let's go grab that real quick. Okay, so this is a shout out again to Callista. She put this together. So this is not a complete spreadsheet. She didn't finish it, but the idea here is what we're looking for. So you can put a stat change in any one of these. It gives you an end stat. And what you're going to do is you're going to compare this column and go. And the main reason she made it was because she wanted, if you're deciding between a badge or something or a card. And so it's like, well, do I want to use that card or this card or that badge or this badge? So you can come in here and say your the new badge that you're going to get is going to give you, or one of them is increases your crit damage by, 20%. Or you get a supervillain damage that increases by, 5%. And it's kind of like, okay, well, according to, and this is based on these base stats. So your crit damage is already at 175 and your supervillain damage is already at 50%. So looking at this, it's like, oh, well, and based on this spreadsheet you're looking at, you want to get the crit damage because it's a little bit better percent increase. Now, let's assume that your supervillain damage is only 20%. Then that same 5% stat change is actually more important because you get a bigger percent change on those stats, meaning that you can gain more damage from it. And that's the way you want to sort of look at these things, where it's kind of like, okay, that's something that I gain more, maybe total damage, 0.1. It's like, whoa, holy cow. Okay, so if I can go from 0.2 total damage, or let's like see what was my total damage in my PvP was 38.6%. So let's just do 0.38. If I can do a 0.05, it's like, okay, so if I'm looking at 5% total damage there, let's look at, I don't know, let's make this 0.01 actually. Whatever, that's fine. So, when you're gaining, it's like, all right, so if I can gain 5% total damage, or maybe let's make it 3%, or no, I guess, let's see where it goes, 0.04. Okay, so you can see, and again, this is min-max stuff. This stuff might not matter for a lot of you. That's why I really wanted to say, when you're looking at it, and at the end of the day, PvP defense pierce, PvP damage increase and decrease, those are main 3 stats for sure. Crit rate matters for all parts in the game. I say PvE, make sure to get that up as best as you can. All right. And then definitely look at a defense pierce a little bit in PvE, mainly if you're doing alliance raids. Get that crit damage up, total damage. Those multipliers, they all matter. They all matter. I hate to say that, they do. And then that's part of the reason why I showed you the gear for where you can get some of those stats. Grab those stats from those pieces and kind of go from there. So I hope this video has been helpful. I know sometimes this stuff can be a little kind of boring or tedious or just something that might not be up your alley, but a lot of people are asking about this. There is no perfect answer. Don't stress too much unless you're really trying to min-max. And don't worry about min-maxing until you get, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, 1, 5 range. And that's 1.5 million. That's when you're 1.2, 1.1 million. That's when you're going to want to start really doing that stuff. And before that, just build your stuff. Just get higher. Try to get decent rolls on your gear. I've got multiple videos out about that. I touched on it here as well. Appreciate you guys making this far. If you're new to the channel, check out the Discord link in the description below. Hammer down like buttons, click notification bell, subscribe, all that sort of thing. And until next time, I hope you have a wonderful day.